Hey, welcome back to episode 25. I got a really good one for you today that I assure you does not end in disaster, but it should end in some learning for you. You're probably here because you saw the thumbnail, so you know that I got the project done and I did it correctly. So stay tuned, let's jump into it, and I'll show you what we did right and what we did wrong. A new friend of mine from CBC decided she was going to come over and do a little article on what have you been doing during COVID. And what better way to show off the skills that I've got than to make a CBC logo for CBC News? And lucky for me, I kind of did it like a cooking show. I did one before, being sneaky and getting it finished. And then when she got there, I was going to do a second one and give it to her. Both of these are shown in the video, but the failure is shown in the end, and I'll tell you more about that later. Like all the lost foam casting process that you want good detail, you have to cover it with a watered down drywall mix. For this one, I kind of rushed it to the market and then had to scrape off a bit of the drywall mix after and then hot glue some stuff back on so I could get my sprues in. But that worked out okay, of course. This process is going to be a little bit different than most of my lost foam casting videos. This one's going to be using sodium silicate as a binder. I first lay down a bed of sodium silicate and sand, and this is where the part will rest on top of. The purpose of this is to keep everything super flat so I don't have any issues with it bowing or bending. Only the best for CBC, of course. If you're not familiar with the sodium silicate, it's just a matter of adding a little bit of sodium silicate into the sand and mixing it until it kind of binds, much like you would for green sand casting. I learned from SV Seeker when I'm doing this process to flip it over in another pail because there's usually some sand that doesn't mix in quite good enough on the bottom. And this is a good solution to fixing that problem. Oh, and if you haven't seen any of SV Seeker's videos, you have to check it out. And you got to start it out right from the beginning. I mean, this guy built a ship in his backyard over 3 or 4 years, and he's going to sail around the world with it. Now, some of you astute casters out there are noticing something I'm doing wrong here, aren't you? That's right. The casting's way too close to the outside wall of the cope and drag. Now, I got away with it the first time, but the second time I did not get away with it, and we'll show you more about that in a bit. Now, I probably also should be using a sieve to filter out some of the bigger chunkies, but this does turn out a good product in the end, and I think next time I might do it that way. This casting, by the way, is also 18 inches long by 10 inches wide. And once it was done, I think I only had about a 1/16 of an inch bow in it, which is considerably good, and I'm quite happy with the end product. Now for one of my favorite parts of the whole project. The sodium silicate, if you don't know much about that, that's the wet stuff that we're mixing into the sand earlier. This is magically activated by CO2. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, where am I going to get some CO2 in my shop? Well, your welding gas, the 75-25 mix you probably have, that will work for sodium silicate casting. Let's bring it back for the welding shop and fire up the foundry and get things rolling here. This is a pretty good segue to my standard safety talk. Remember, the best way to avoid accidents is preparation, education, and patience. Let's take a look at some of the safety gear that I'm wearing and some of the safety gear that I use. The coat that I have is a Nomex coat that is fire resistant. Best practices would probably have an apron with a quick tearaway on it, and I probably should end up getting one of those. I also have a face shield, conveniently with a helmet, but not necessary. I always have a correct fire extinguisher on hand, and some water just in case anything spills on me. And the usually overlooked respirator, or half mask as some people call it, with the correct filters on it. If you don't have the correct filters, you might as well not have a filter at all because it's not going to be filtering out the poisonous gases or the correct particles. Let's throw some gloves on, throw some metal in, and get working here. Since I'm using old industrial parts, there's that nasty flag that keeps floating at the top. And since some of this stuff is industrial parts, if you have any steel mixed in with it, it generally will just sink to the bottom and you can scoop it out later. However, this can affect your metallurgy. And if you're making space-age parts or industrial parts you don't want flaws in, you probably don't want to do that. But hey, really, we're just making artsy stuff here, so we don't have to get too technical. Taking the advice of Kelly Caulfield, I'm going to take this crucible and throw it out after I'm done this casting. And I'm going to build a new one out of HSS steel with a welded bottom on it. This will probably last much longer, and if I weld it on the bottom and the top, I'm not too worried about it leaking. But like any crucible, I never will fully trust it. Now here's the tricky part about the pour. You gotta keep that cup at least a quarter full at the bottom, or it's gonna sneak away on you and you're gonna wreck your whole casting. And if I didn't already tell you, this is one of the castings that worked out. But after, I'll show you the other casting that didn't work out, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why it didn't work out. And if you don't think that's what happened, definitely throw the comments in down below. And it's also a good time, if you haven't clicked subscribe already, or the like button. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out making more videos, and it really drives me to make better for everyone. This is the third or fourth time I've used this sand with sodium silicate mixed into it. It's just a matter of grabbing a ram and smashing it down flat and giving it a quick sieve before you use it again, but you can use it again and again. I'm sure at some point it'll wear out. But the proof's in the pudding. This worked out quite well. Now let's take it out to the shop and do some of that two-part epoxy on it. Unfortunately, I had planned of doing it on the other one that I was going to cast when Jennifer came. However, things don't always work out as planned, but you will learn from my mistakes, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes if you decide to do this kind of casting. Everything was done exactly the same for Jennifer's casting. However, I did a few things different. This was poured a little bit colder, and I could see it in the final casting. However, you remember when I was packing the original one with sand? And I said some of the foundrymen might point out some problems? Well, that's right. It was way too close to the side, and I had a blowout on the side. It finally burned through the side, and when I tried stepping on the wood, I actually stepped on the sand and crushed everything. And I was pretty disappointed about it. In the end, I did learn a ton, and I hope you learned something too. And I sent Jen home with this lovely sign that I'm sure she's going to enjoy. Thanks again, CBC, for coming and visiting. Hey, welcome back.
Are you kidding me?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll just cut the front of it out.
Okay.
Hey, welcome back to episode 25. I got a really good one for you today that I assure you does not end in this disaster.
I wasn't recording.
Are you kidding?
No, it was. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
You are not going to throw that at me.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
I am.
No, you're not. I assure
yeah?
you, you're not.
Oh, yeah? You want to see this? You see this?
Dad card. Ow.